It's nefarious, man. Like, the brain works in fucked up ways.
The mind is one of the most deceiving, manipulative pieces of equipment, flesh, human bodies on earth. I never have trusted my brain.
All of that weight lives in your head, and you are the decision maker.
Psychology of Entrepreneurship.
My next guest is a legend. He has single-handedly had the most impact on me, my business, and my relationships. Since meeting him, I have, 1, decided to up my podcast game. Yes, I had the idea to create audio documentaries even before Amplify was born, but seeing what Jayson Gaignard created with Community Made pushed me to make my own. 2, last year I got back from MMT Park City. MMT, by the way, is Mastermind Talks. It's an event that's held annually. So last year I got back from MMT Park City and changed the whole structure of my annual event, We Are Podcast. I also cancelled 2019 to evolve that event in 2020. April 2020, actually. You heard it here first. And 3, I am 15 kilos lighter, 33 pounds, since attending Park City this year, MMT, which was in Los Cabos. Also, we just signed the Sasha Group as a client. If you don't know who they are, you should Google them. The reason I bring all this up is because Jayson Gaignard is one of the most humble humans I know. And it is hard for him to take praise. I remember the first time I met Jayson, it was the first and the last time I will ever forget my wallet. But we shared some insane entrepreneurial stories with each other, especially some dark ones. But the whole thing I love about Jayson the most is he doesn't like bigger is better. He has an amazing episode of his podcast called Scaling is Stupid, and he has a phenomenal list of accomplishments. But to understand the man, you have to understand what goes on inside the mind of Jayson Gaignard, who Forbes described as one of the most influential people in the entrepreneurial space.
The thing that always comes to mind, which is, I guess, one of the prouder moments I have, and I don't have many of them, honestly, was the first time I did MMT on the final evening. I had a couple standing ovations throughout the event, but I was amongst like heroes of mine on some level. Like Tim Ferriss was there, Mark Echo was there, just like a lot of like TED speakers and that kind of stuff. And it was just, I mean, to know where I was 5 months ago to where I was then, it was just a really beautiful moment. It scared the hell out of me every step of the way. Like it was, I was not a speaker by any stretch. That was the largest audience I ever had to address. On top of that, it was like my heroes in the audience. So it was, I just remember there's a saying by, I think it was by Tony Robbins. I haven't been able to locate it since, but it's just saying that like 7 seconds of courage can change your life. And I fundamentally remember vividly, like the event was starting 15 minutes late because I was too scared to get on stage. I was at the back of the room and I'm like, I'm just too scared. Like I was terrified. Even our newest, like our events still, I'm still scared to get on stage. They all start a little late. But I remember that first event being petrified to go on stage. And then I just remember that saying, like 7 seconds of courage can change your life. And all I needed was 7 to 10 seconds to get on the stage. And once I was there, it was like, it's showtime. And I remember that same thing when I went skydiving. I'm terrified of heights. But you only need like 7 to 10 seconds of courage to jump out of the plane. And once you're out of the plane, it's so, yeah, that's kind of what I've subscribed to on some level.
Not long ago, a friend of mine, Mike Reed, asked me a question. Ronsley, do you consider yourself to be brave? My response at the time was, of course not. I don't do brave, or something to that effect. Since then, I realized that I'm braver than I realized I was, or even gave myself credit for. Like when I asked Rochelle to marry me, when I went on stage for my TEDx talk, when I wrote and published my book, when I went for a run this morning, when I looked at my patterns and behaviors rather than just argue about being right. Yeah, Rochelle will tell you how long this took. My point is, I bet you are courageous too. While you're listening to this volume, I would like you to come up with 3 things that you do regularly that you become brave for. This is important. It's part of your responsibility as a listener, I suppose. Jokes aside, this is a game changer, so think about it. Because apart from forgetting how brave and courageous we are as entrepreneurs, founders, and creatives, we struggle with owning our own creations. I do, at least.
See, the thing is, I have a hard time owning I created. I mean, I did on some level. I made this container, but I also fundamentally believe it's a community and people bring into it. I'm really just the bouncer at the door to make sure that I keep out the slimy people, so to speak. There's definitely, some type of ownership over, I did some of this, but I probably don't take as much ownership as most people give me credit for. But yeah, I mean, I just feel incredibly privileged to be of service to such an incredible group of people. To me, it's almost selfish. People give me thank you notes all the time, and I'm getting more value than anybody as far as the amount of fulfillment and joy and just meaning to my life being of service to such a great group of people. I mean, there's a lot of science and data that shows one of the biggest predictors of someone's happiness is their social ties and the meaning of their work. And I have just my meaning is off the radar being of service to such a beautiful group of people. So yeah, I just feel incredibly grateful. So I feel torn between this, yes, I've created something on some small level, but I also have a hard time taking ownership of it because I feel at the same time I'm getting so much from the community and that kind of stuff.
So here's the deal. I forget if I've mentioned this before, but when someone used to introduce me before I go on stage, I used to hear all the things that they said about me and go, wow, that's so cool. Then all that would disappear when I realized that they were just talking about me. I am a lot better at this, but this used to happen a lot. That's a huge sign of lack of self-worth.
I guess maybe I give off the illusion that I've overcome that, so to speak. It's a weird balance because my wife can shut off. She can do a vacation. She used to laugh because we own land in the Bahamas because we've been planning to build it for a while. So we own land there. So we've been to the Bahamas a ton of times. We got married there specifically. And we go, and this is when we started dating 10 years ago. We go to a beach and I'd be there for 2 minutes. I'm all right, next beach. And she's dude, what are you doing? Right. So I've always struggled with that. I still don't know my stance on that. I see value. A lot of people say that, you need to take time off or you need to take a break or whatever. It just doesn't seem enjoyable to me.
In June of 2019, Rochelle and I went to Bali for 10 days to recharge and take a break. We were, at the time, not used to taking breaks at all. At least I wasn't. On day 2, we rented a scooter for the week, and at about 8 o'clock at night, while we were driving home, Rochelle said to me, "Let's go for a drive." I responded, "Where are we going?" She said, "Anywhere." I said, "What road do I take?" She said, "Anyone." And then I said, "What do I put into Google Maps?" After arguing for a few minutes, I realized how ridiculously blind my perspective was. And when this happens, I remember Alan Watts and how to enjoy the dance.
Same way in dancing. You don't aim at a particular spot in the room. That's where you should arrive. The whole point of the dancing is the dance. Now, but we don't see that as something brought by our education into our everyday conduct. We've got a system of schooling which gives a completely different impression.
I interviewed Jayson in March of 2019, and I was just recovering from my version of burnout and being open to whatever the universe presented to me in terms of opportunities. I was so curious, though, on how Jayson structured his life.
The thing is, I'm not doing stuff that is uber stressful all the time. But when I have that free time, Philip McKernan really put me onto this, his philosophy is cultivating a life of space and simplicity. And I love that. I love that whole idea. And on some level, I've done that with MMT, where it's 4 or 5 months of really hard work and then 6, 7 months of, podcast interviews, or I'll do my own podcast, or I'll write a book, or those kind of things. So I could take on projects that I enjoy. But as far as you won't probably see me anytime soon doing a 10-day silent meditation retreat or any of that kind of stuff. It's not enjoyable. And one thing I have become clear on as well is that I don't even know if I identify with the term, so to speak. Being clear to me recently that I'm much more of a creative. I'm an artist, and that is really, it feels so hard to say and so weird to say because I didn't go to art school or any of that kind of stuff. but everything I do is all about creativity and artistry. Like I love baking sourdough bread. Like I can lose myself planning MMT and executing MMT just as much as I can lose myself baking a loaf of bread, just as much as I can lose myself, doing woodworking and crafting something with my hands. And that became clear to me rather recently. It's interesting, but with that said, it is important to take the time to create space in certain things. And I'll give you an example. I was on the car right here. I was talking to an entrepreneur who's in transition right now, got out of his business less than a month ago and is already thinking about the next business. I said, listen, I'm more than willing to support you and like connect you with people who will help you get this business off the ground. But I will share that I've had a handful of friends, especially in the MMT community, 9 of them specifically in the last year have sold their businesses. And I've seen what a good transition looks like and what a bad transition looks like. Bad transitions are you haven't done the internal work. So one guy specifically in the community, after he made his exit, bought like 4 Lamborghinis, has like a $30,000 a month house, all this kind of stuff, and is just burning through cash and is miserable. Why? Because he never did the internal work.
According to a publication in Forbes, statistics show that more than 60% of work absenteeism is attributed to psychological stress and stress-related burnout. Experts estimate that burnout translates into a loss of anywhere from $150 to $350 billion annually for US businesses.
I'm an artist. You are an artist. Entrepreneurship is artistry, and vice versa. Mothers are the original entrepreneurs, in my opinion. They are artists and caregivers and life support and therapists and project managers, among other things. What kind of success metrics are you looking at? Are they making you happy? Are they the ones you've been handed, or are they the ones that actually give you fulfillment? While I was considering all these questions, Jayson said this.
I love all people on some level, but I care deeply about a select group of people. And I want to help them overcome hurdles, overcome pains, whatever the case may be, almost at all costs. And that could be, they want to scale their business for whatever reason because they want to have more impact financially for philanthropy, or, they want to have a better relationship with their spouse or a better relationship with their kids or have better health. Whatever those goals are, if it matters to them, it matters to me. If I can help them achieve those set goals, that to me is incredibly rewarding. It's funny, a friend of mine, Sunny Verma, who's part of the community, said the people in your life, they either have the eye of envy or the eye of admiration. And the people I surround myself with, and very much myself, like I subscribe to the eye of admiration. Like I fundamentally, love seeing people succeed and love seeing them, achieve whatever their goals are. And it's not necessarily financial. It could be in any area. And for me, one of the best ways to help move the needle for people oftentimes is through connecting them with other people who've done it, or just genuine great people to begin with. So to me, when I see 2 people connect and really hit it off, I don't know, there's just something kind of visceral in me. They're like, I don't need acknowledgement. I just love to see it. Or I love to hear about it a year later. But to hear, great people supporting each other, great people working alongside each other, to me, there's nothing better.
This audio documentary would have been very different if not for Mastermind Talks. Kelsey Ramsden and I talk about it in depth in Addendum 1. I cannot highlight enough how different my life is because of MMT, but it all makes sense because while I was thinking about myself, Jayson said this that made me understand why this event is like no other.
I actually have a photo from our event in 2015 where both my wife and I look like death. Like we are both pale. We have these huge bags under our eyes, but I have the biggest smile that you could, it is the most genuine, huge smile you can imagine. And I have that photo in my office. And I look at it and it's just my physical body is crushed, planning this event. But there's nothing else I'd rather be doing at that time.
Do you love what you do? Do you do what you love? That's the paradox, I suppose, in being an entrepreneur as a creative, doing what you love and loving what you do and ultimately getting paid to do it.
The more I realize how some of that plays into, the work that I do. I was always under the impression that you pick the business that you're going to focus on, that kind of stuff. And sometimes, a business picks you. And in the context of MMT, it's a community. It brings belonging to a lot of people. And for a long, long time, even looking back into my childhood, I never felt like I belonged, not even in my own family. And then also just felt very isolated growing up. Adding to that, the fact that I have a strong desire to be liked historically, both of those things create a great concoction, to want and strive to bring great people together. And the thing is, like, the misconception about me is, like, when I bring people together, I'm not at the center of the room, and I strive not to be at the center. Like, I'm usually the fly on the wall. I just love bringing great people together. So yeah, the more I dig into the work that I do, and again, it's incredibly fulfilling, and I'll be doing it in some capacity for the rest of my life. I'm not saying, it'll take the form of MMT. Hopefully it will. But I will be doing something along these lines as far as bringing people together, great people together, whether it's just dinner at my house or in an event or in a community or for a family vacation like we just did. Forever. But at the same time, again, there's things that I'm realizing from my past are showing up in the work that I do. And I'm fine with it. It makes sense, which is interesting.
We all have this desire to be liked and accepted, at some level at least.
If I had to get right down granular style on it, I think my core weakness is probably acceptance. So I think that if ever there's a moment where someone says to me, you could be liked more, I think I will do that. You could have more notoriety, people could value you more, people could think you're better. That is bizarre to say,
Kelsey Ramsden from Volume 7 there. Part of MMT this year was a bunch of questions were sent to our close friends and team members. This surprised me. It's called a 360 survey. One of the questions was, share an interesting fact about Ronsley that not many people would know. And one of my closest friends, Zile, who I've known for over 20 years, said this. Ronsley used to host barbecues for Easter where literally everyone was invited, and he and his housemates would even get people walking down the street to come and join the party. I think he just liked to share and spread some joy. That was ridiculous for me to read because I never even thought about that. However, I think that is why I like Jayson so much. I can relate a lot to what he says and how he sees life. I love it. But for me, every time I get into a funk about the problems I get to deal with, I realize that I picked this life. My life as a creative, as an artist, is to solve meaningful problems in the world.
There's a couple struggles we're having with the organization right now, but one of the other ones is creating this culture of fear where people are worried that they'll get kicked out. And it's going to come naturally with our model, which is very exclusive. We've had over 18,000 entrepreneurs apply for a community that's capped at 150 people. So just that alone creates that sense of fear. But then also our philosophy was early on, like when you have success in this industry, the common strategy to scale is to build a bigger community or more communities and that kind of stuff. And for us, instead of scaling in size every year, we scale by raising the caliber of people in attendance. So historically, we would only allow a third of the people to come back, which would cause us to eliminate 2/3. And I thought about it, and that was kind of like the Jack Welch, his GE philosophy, which is like knock off the bottom 20% or something like that. I mean, it works in some regards, but then also how much of a community is it if you're kicking out 2/3 every year? So we've adjusted and made it half the group can come back, and it served us well because again, it really makes sure that when somebody in the community reaches out to another person, they drop everything to support them and that kind of stuff. So it's created this nice culture. At the same time, it's created this culture of fear. We're also not only are people sometimes walking on eggshells to not do anything wrong and that kind of stuff. But also the flip side of that is sometimes people feel like they can't be themselves for the fear of being judged or for the fear of them being their natural selves does not fit within the community. And for that reason, they're out. So, there's definitely pros and cons to it. I mean, if you look at the business from an outside perspective, there's nothing more you'd want, to have 18,000 people apply to be like, I want in at this premium price point and all this kind of stuff. But that to me is problematic. And we're trying to find that balance between creating exclusivity, and being very selective as far as who we have, but also creating an environment where people feel comfortable to be themselves. Because ultimately, that's what we need.
Oh yeah. A common friend, Simon Bowen, said that getting into mastermind talks or MMT is harder than getting into Harvard. When we come back, why Jayson considers himself not self-made, but community-made.
main objective of this audio documentary is to bring together entrepreneurs and creatives who share similar values in a place where conversations can be had without judgment. A place where our listeners can give us constructive feedback to improve the show with topic and guest recommendations. For access to this space, go to mustamplify.com/POE and click the button.
Before the break, we covered bringing people together, success metrics, and dealing with different kinds of business problems. Now we discuss the question, what questions should we as entrepreneurs be asking ourselves more?
Well, it's funny, you just, when you said the word question, what is a question? The first thing that jumped out was actually something that Philip posed to me years ago, which was, the original context was, who are you without your children? I know enough people that when they first had their child, they're like, oh, now I have a reason to live and all that kind of stuff. But the way I took that, I kind of flipped it and I'm like, who are you without your business? And that is scary because so many of us have our identities tied to the business. When the business is going well, we're doing well. The business is not going well, we're not doing well. And that kind of stuff. So that was the first kind of thing that came to mind. But mental health is a tricky one because I know, I think statistically, entrepreneurs suffer at a 30% higher rate than the general public when it comes to depression. And there's a lot of highs and lows.
They did four little prompts in a functional MRI machine. So they had people look at an image of a business that was not their business, but like some sort of neutral. And then they had people look at an image of their business, whether it's a picture of the office or the logo. And then they had people look at a neutral child, and they had people look at their own child. So they looked at what parts of the brain were activated, really comparing the relationship between what happens neurologically when we think about our own children and when we think about our business. And like, no surprise for those of us who think about these things, our brains look really, really, really similar, which means that our reward centers are activated. The striatum, the part of the brain that's like kind of ooey gooey, attached, affectionate, in love even.
That was Dr. Sherry Walling from Volume 2. But Jason's question is super important to consider.
I kind of flipped it and I'm like, who are you without your business?
Who are you without your business? When I started to ask myself this question, at first my brain told me it was a stupid question to ask. Then I started to dig further, and I landed up asking myself the question, what goals are you trying to pursue just to make sure you hold up that image of yourself in relationship to your business? I'm still working on this. Maybe I talk about it in another volume. Not sure yet, but I'm still working on it. The roller coaster, however, is real, but there's always something underlying in the background of an entrepreneurial roller coaster.
Cameron Herold has this philosophy of like the highs and lows of CEOs, about how we go from like uninformed optimism and then there's a whole roller coaster diagram that came with it. But I mean, even outside the whole context of entrepreneurship, like we live in a time where we are yearning for belonging. There's a quote there, which I use in all my talks, which is like a numberless multitude of people of whom no one was close and no one was distant. And I feel like that's the society we live in. Like we're not distant. We're 1 degree of separation from anybody, literally anybody. We're also not close to anybody either. And that's a problem. But creating that sense of community and that sense of belonging, if you like finding that tribe or even creating that tribe, that's ultimately what I did. I didn't find it out there in any other events or any other groups out there. I didn't find my people. I found slivers of them, and then eventually I brought them all together, and that became my tribe, and thankfully became the tribe for a lot of other people as well. So I think that's just the first component there's a ton of studies that run by a guy named Robert Waldinger. They basically discovered after following that the biggest predictor of longevity was not diet, was not physical activity, it was actually the closeness of their social ties. We have people that we can rely on, we can lean on, but we don't. We don't ask. We don't ask for help. We don't know how to ask for help. We don't want to bother people. I am like this. I brought in a friend of mine. He opened up the event. And the reason for that, his name is Zach Anner, and he's a YouTube star, has probably a couple million YouTube subscribers. He does almost these parody videos of sorts, of like him trying to run on a treadmill because he can't, his legs don't work, or like those kind of things. And he did this opening talk at our event. You know, he would not be able to do anything without being able to ask for help.
Yeah.
Right? Like he couldn't film these YouTube videos. He couldn't travel without having somebody by his side. And he was actually the one who gave me the term community made. He's like, I'm not self-made, I'm community made. And the reason I brought him to the event is because people are coming to the event for community and to feel like they belong and to create a space where they feel like they be themselves and be seen. And that kind of stuff. But that's only half the equation. There's the other half that I haven't been able to crack, which is how do I get these people to be able to, they build a great network, they build these great relationships, but being willing to ask for help. But for most people, just the whole sense of building a community and building, like I remember there was a book called Never Eat Alone by Keith Ferrazzi. He wrote another book called Who's Got Your Back? And in that book, he interviewed 1,000 people at random and he asked the people one question only, who has your back? Yeah. Surprisingly, 55% of people felt like nobody had their back. Even more surprisingly, 60% of those people were married. So that's a problem. Like I think at our core, we need to at least find a few people where we believe they have our back, that if, you know, stuff hit the fan, we could sleep on their couch for a couple of nights or whatever the case may be. Like I could not imagine navigating the world feeling that isolated, feeling that alone.
The number one reason why businesses fail is there's no market need. According to research done by CB Insights, 42% of businesses fail for this simple reason. The second most common reason that affects 29% of businesses is a lack of funds. In a word, bankruptcy.
Being alone or feeling like you are alone even though you are surrounded by people is the loneliest feeling in the world. Realizing that I had to mend my relationship with myself first before I could even appreciate the people around me was next level confronting, which reminded me about Todd Herman saying,
we've already unpacked and talked about how the importance of having allies and friends and great mentors and leaders around us. We all already understand all that. And yet most people live such a lonely existence between the 6 inches of their ears.
You know what made me even more uncomfortable? This question.
Who has your back?
I know Rochelle has my back. Well, she's had my back for years, but exploring past that point made me go down a rabbit hole of my own. Thinking about support systems and people having your back, it seemed like it was a good time to ask the question about achieving a work-life balance.
First thing, the whole notion of work-life balance is a broken notion. Like it's hard to compartmentalize when you're an entrepreneur because business just, you know, is always on your mind. And I'm very lucky that I live a very integrated kind of lifestyle where my wife is involved in the business. My whole family is involved with the business. 95% of our social time as a family is with people from MMT. So it's worked in that regards. But the one thing I thought about that we were doing this year, and thus far it's been working for us, was planning out the important walks in advance. So when I look at my calendar for 2019, yes, there's business travel in there, but also next week I'm going to Vegas with my wife for 4 days. I'm doing a daddy-daughter trip with my daughter at the end of May. We're going to Vegas again, oddly enough, because she wanted to go. I'm doing a solo trip in Boulder, a week long in April. Candice is doing a solo trip in June in Ireland.
Again, I did this interview with Jayson in March of 2019, and I loved checking out Jayson's adventures online. And I really wanted to know about avoiding burnout because, let's be honest, us creatives and entrepreneurs, we don't have a really good burnout radar, do we?
So to me, as things get crazy around those things, those are the events that'll kind of keep me anchored. And that's kind of the goal. And in hopes that I won't run into burnout. Like I'll have those, because anytime I ran into burnout before, it's because I didn't have those important things in the calendar. I remember specifically probably about 2 years ago, we were in June and I was looking at my July. So the following month, I had no trips planned. And I'm like, this will be the first time in 3 years I'm not traveling for an entire month. And I got to preface this saying, like, I'm not doing crappy travel. Like, I'm not going to sales conferences. I'm going rally racing with a bunch of guys. I'm going hosting dinners. Like, it's all really, really great stuff, but it still takes a toll regardless. This time 2 years ago, I was I was in June looking at July. I had no travel planned. By the end of July, I did 5 trips. And I realized that I have a hard time saying no to things. And when I have space in the calendar, I'll just fill it with things, which just kind of loops back to, early on in this conversation. So to me, it was really important from that point forward. I actually, at that point, canceled all travel for the rest of the year because I'm like, this is broken. This is not working. No. And then when I kind of reimagined what travel's going to look like, because I'm like, I need to travel. I wanted to make sure I had those quarterly trips with my daughter, quarterly trips with my wife, solo time. Solo time is something I never did, ever. Like, it felt incredibly selfish. The whole notion of it was just so foreign to me. I'm like, how could I leave my family high and dry for 3-4 days, and go to a spa or whatever the case may be? Like, it's bananas. But that was really pushed on by Philip and his work.
We don't like ourselves. So many of us don't like ourselves. We're afraid of how humanity will judge us, but humanity will never judge us the way we judge ourselves. So we spend so much time and energy looking good on the outside, pretending we're happy on Facebook every single day. And very few of us are willing to actually look at the greatest bully that we'll ever meet, that meets us in the fucking mirror every single morning of our lives. And if we can deal with that one thing, if we could just deal with that one bully, everything else will look after itself.
If you don't recognize that Irish accent, that was Philip McKernan, Volume 1.
Philip McKernan, he has like this philosophy of like, I'm just telling you things like you already know, right? Like, people oftentimes know this stuff. Philip is the type of guy who will put a mirror to your face and be like, this is it. Like, look, open your eyes, like, here it is. And you're like, I know, just get out of here. And you kind of did at the beginning of this interview, right? Saying like, you have a hard time sitting with praise, right? And I'm like, I know that. But it's helpful and it makes you want to, but I'm the type of individual, you're the type of individual that when you're given this awareness, you want to lean into it. You want to eradicate it, eliminate it, or overcome it, or use it as fuel, or just have an awareness around it. So that's part of our DNA. And that's, unfortunately, not everybody's like that.
Like Jayson mentioned, I struggle with praise just like he does, but we are getting better. I am for sure getting better. I'm saying thank you to compliments first before belittling myself by making the accomplishment smaller in comparison to something else. But I've started to notice that. Some days I just say thank you. It's all about practice. What are the reps?
I start each of my days with writing a personal handwritten note. Have since I was 22. I've written over 4,700 personal letters to people. That's how I start my day. A lot of people, they talk about having a gratitude journal. I think that's one way of doing it. I like taking the idea of gratitude and taking it, not just holding on to it myself, but passing it off to someone and something else.
Before we wrap this up, we introduced this topic about not saying, I want to be like this person or that person, but saying, I like this stuff. What repeated activities do I need to do to get close to getting that stuff? For example, for me to run a half marathon, there is a training schedule that I have to incorporate as part of my day so that in 16 weeks I can cross that finish line. So here's where you take mental notes, because this is called the perfect exercise.
I did this exercise called the perfect day exercise, which is basically getting very clear on what that perfect day looks like. Where are you waking up? What time are you waking up? Who are you waking up next to? What are you doing in that first half an hour, 2 hours in the morning? Are you, grabbing a coffee, rushing out the door? Are you driving your kids to school? Are you going to work in an office with a bunch of people? Are you working from a laptop under a coconut tree? Like, what does that look like? And map that out with all the emotions you want to feel throughout the day. And the nice thing is once you map that out, you map out that perfect day. Then I've gone as far as like mapping out the perfect week, the perfect month, the perfect year. So how many vacations am I taking? What does that look like? When you get really clear on that, what it enables you to do is you can start using that as a filter for all future opportunities. And you can ask yourself, is this going to take me closer to my perfect day, or is it going to take me further away? I fell into this trap where I got into entrepreneurship to have freedom oftentimes you need the freedom to have like money financially to go on trips and all that kind of stuff. And that's one side of freedom, but you need the freedom from the business to actually achieve those things, right? So you can be focused on making a ton of money and have the freedom to do things, but be a slave to the business. And I've been guilty of that in the past. So I'm just very clear on what that perfect day looks like. And I live it pretty close.
Psychology of Entrepreneurship.
Coming up on the Psychology of Entrepreneurship.
I messed it up and I was like, whoa, guys, who does this girl think she is? She's stupid. She said that wrong. She's not really that big of a deal. Why is she on the stage? Whether if you're feeling like you're struggling in this regard, here are some tactics that I'm actually trying live right now. Only is it going to help more people see you as a leader and want to hire you, it's also going to raise your internal self-confidence so that you don't feel so nervous on the sales call. You do feel more belief behind what you're offering.
Psychology of Entrepreneurship.
I interviewed Jayson because he is one of the most nicest humans you'll ever meet. We have a lot of similar entrepreneurial battle scars. He is the best-selling author of Mastermind Dinners, Building Lifelong Relationships by Connecting Experts, Influencers, and Linchpins. After becoming $250,000 in debt in 2012, Jayson began curating dinners in Toronto, Canada with small groups of entrepreneurs that focused on relationship building. And in 2013, founded Mastermind Talks, or MMT. Forbes describes Jayson as one of the top networkers to watch. His podcast, Community Made, is a #1 rated business podcast. His work has been featured in influential publications such as Forbes, Lifehacker, and Business Insider. He is a baker, a curator, and an opportunity maker.
Psychology of Entrepreneurship.
This is a Must Amplify production. Special thanks to every guest expert that has appeared on the show. Editing and sound design by Kelly Bonnyman and Joel Thomas. Voiceover by Sonia Stone. Fact voiceover by Kelly Bonnyman. Guest research and content by Claire Gould. Project managed by Shannon Morrison. Produced and hosted by me, Ronsley Vaz. For more episodes and where to listen, go to mustamplify.com/POE.
Hey, it's Kaylee from Must Amplify. I'm the sound engineer for this volume of Psychology of Entrepreneurship. I'm a part of the team that made this production come alive. Our team consists of members from all around the globe, with our headquarters based in West End, Brisbane, Australia, the land of the drop bear. For more about the cool stuff that we're up to and to work out of our studios, head to mustamplify.com. Are you still listening? Thanks for sticking around. Here at Amplify, we love receiving your messages and videos of support towards Psychology of Entrepreneurship. Shout out to Trivinia Barber for sending in this lovely message.
Hey Ronsley, so I'm into Sherry's interview. Holy cow, really brilliant. It helps me feel less crazy, helps me feel not alone. It helps me feel like there's a little bit of hope to all of the sort of fear. I'm listening to the FOMO part right now, and just basically, this confirms so much of the stuff that I've been thinking and feeling and wanting to have deep, serious discussions about with people. So very good, sir. Oh my gosh, everyone needs to listen to this.